It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. I'm Pete Francis, joined by Willie Witten. Today, our special guest is one of the best guitar players around, Joanna Connor. Joanna, thanks so much for joining us today.
Why, thank you. That was a lovely intro.
Hey, you deserve it.
Thank you.
The first time I heard your music and discovered you was about 10 years ago. I was visiting a friend of mine in Chicago, and he said, I'm going to take you around to some of the blues clubs in Chicago. So we ended up going to this place called Kingston Mines. And before we went there, he said, you have to check out this guitar player, Joanna Connor. And we get there, and there you are, and you're playing slide. And my reaction was kind of the same as everyone else's. Everyone's just like, whoa, I mean, this is incredible. And I think, Willie, you have a similar experience.
I do. Mine was probably about 5 years, even earlier that, sort of in the beginnings of the 2000s, and just going down, and there's right on Halstead Street, there's that great little area you can hit blues, BLUES, in Kingston Mines, and you can make an entire night out of it. And that was the first time I saw you as well. I think the person opposite you was maybe either Carl Weathersby, but you know, we just go back and forth from one stage to the next for hours, and it was awesome. I was hooked on your music from that time. So,
but thank you.
With all that, I know you were not born in Chicago, but we think of you as a Chicago blues musician, one of the premier ones. How did you get started in all this? How did you make your way to Chicago?
Yeah, well, I've lived in Chicago now longer than anywhere, so I'm officially declaring my Chicago-ness or whatever. So, well, I first got started. Let's see. I had my own band back home. I grew up in Worcester, Mass. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. So East Coast girl. And I went on a cross-country, the Hippie road trip with the band from Massachusetts to California. We love Chicago music. I'd heard Chicago blues people coming through Massachusetts a lot. They would tour all the time. So I was familiar and I was a fan, and we stopped just to see what was going on, and ended up on Halstead Street, and it was unbelievable. I mean, every major blues star at that time in the early 80s was just hanging out, playing. It was like I was like a kid in a candy store. So I decided to move there a few years later. I was 22. That was 1984, and I never left.
So what drew you to the guitar?
My mom gave me a guitar when I was 7. I didn't even ask for it. So she must have had some kind of psychic premonition. And I just fell in love with it. I always loved music from the time I can remember music from, I realize now I was 2 years old, because I researched this one song I used to sing. I'm like, oh my God, that was 1964. I was 2. And I vividly remember trying to sing. So it's just been a part of me. And, I played guitar in 07 to 9. I quit. I went back in junior high, and I just never put it down.
What was the moment, because you said you did the big hippie road trip across America with the band. That's a big step. That's not something you just draw up on a weekend. What was the moment, or what were some of the artists that really just made you decide that, you know what, this is what I'm doing with my life?
Oh, it's funny. Or for my life period, or moving to Chicago?
Either.
Oh, it's funny. Even when I was a little girl, I would imagine I was going to be a singer before I picked up the guitar. So I used to have this flowered wallpaper, and I would sing to the flowers at night, and my dad would be in the next room, Joanna, go to sleep. So it was just always something I wanted to do. And I always say music chose me from the time I was little. I mean, and a lot of kids love music and whatever, but I seriously just stayed on that path.
I understand once you got the opportunity to jam with Jimmy Page, how did that experience come about?
Wow. So back in the 80s, this is like 85. I was in Dion Payton in the 43rd Street Blues Band, and we were the band Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which, go forward a few years. That's my gig at the Mines. But at that time, there was only one band during the week. So you can imagine it was open the same hours. So we were playing all these sets with breaks. And the last set would usually kind of be a jam. A lot of the good musicians would come through. And Dion was in the dressing room, and I went back there, and I'm like, so what's going on? He's like, Joanna, you're going to start to set off to some English guy here. He's going to play guitar. He didn't even know who it was.
That's
And
awesome.
I walk out there, some English guy. And I walked going to the stage because it was like, the first stage you come through in the main door, like the main
Right.
stage. That's where we would play. And I walking to the stage and sitting right in the front row by that pillar is Jimmy Page and like an entourage. And with a guy from Atlantic Records who was a guy named Rick Sudikoff who would come to see Dion. So I knew Rick, and Rick's like, Joanna, come here. And I'm like, because this is Meet Jimmy, Jimmy Page. Like, oh my gosh, he was super cool. So he got up to jam. He'd play Dion's guitar, and it was Sugar Blue, Valerie Wellington, me, Frank Pellegrino, the announcer, played keyboards, and our bass and drummer. And it was, wow. Talk about a dream come true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you're known as kind of a slide guitar player. And I think anyone who picks up a slide, at first it's really intimidating. And I think even for a lot of really talented guitar players, trying to play slide can be very intimidating. Do you have any tips or advice for people who are trying to pick up and play slide?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really great players, even in Chicago. Like, I talked to Mike Wheeler, Larry McRae. They're like, oh, no, I can't do it. I tried. I'm like, that's because I showed you the right way. So that is the one fortunate thing I had was a teacher back home. The one guitar lesson not one lesson, but that one period of time where I actually took lessons. And he said, yeah, I want to teach you to slide. And I was like 14. I'm like, okay, I think I know what that is. And he was an amazing slide player. So this is the thing. I use my pinky because that gives you the freedom to use other 3 fingers. So basically you're going to anchor the slide against the ring finger, your third finger. The middle finger is going to kind of go down, and the first finger is going to kind of be on top. So the middle finger is going to dampen all the strings. You're going to feel the strings underneath it. And you keep your hand like that. You keep a very, very loose grip. The thumb on the back of the neck is loose. It's not pressing. Everything is extremely light, and you always aim for the fret, on the fret. So that's just the basics. And if you can do all of that, and then keep the slide straight so that it's, not this way or that way, because that's the intonation. So it's just the thing about slide is it's very intricate. Everything's really tiny and precise, but it's also easier because you're not using any kind of pressure or force. So it's actually relaxing once you get the hang of it.
Did you ever, so you say pinky finger, was that the way you were taught? Did you ever mess around with thinking about going with a third finger like some people do? And do you have a preference between glass or metal slides or?
I never did the third finger because I was taught with the pinky, and then it gives you the freedom. I can play chords, I can do it. So why, Dwayne Allman played with the third finger. I'm not knocking it, but it really does. And plus, the original blues guys like Robert Johnson, whatever, they were playing all that intricate finger picking with the slide. So that's kind of the school it came from for me, because my teacher loved that stuff and Ry Cooder and more of the traditional stuff. So that's why I continued that. Really, it's the weight of the slide. You don't want a slide that's too light. Some glass that you buy at stores is too light. So that's how I kind of ended up with using more metal slides, but it's more the weight than anything. Glass is a little smoother tone, but like I said, it's the weight that matters more than anything. That's what's going to give you the tone. And you don't want it super heavy. It's kind of like the whole thing of slide. Everything's kind of like in this little zone where it's just right, yeah.
Who are some slide players that inspired you?
Back in the day, Lowell George, from Little Feat, Bonnie Raitt, Ry Cooder, Dwayne Allman, Robert Johnson, Elmore James, Hound Dog Taylor, later on David Lindley.
Okay.
And then Sonny Landreth, Derek Trucks. There's a big list. They're all fantastic.
So sort of transitioning off this idea of slide, taking a look at last year's album Rise, in this year's album, there's a lot more on 4801 South Indiana Avenue. Before we get into the album itself, I was wondering, and maybe I'm just shooting the moon here, is that album title have any sort of reference to the old Teresa's Lounge?
Bingo, you won. Exactly.
Right. I thought it might be. So I guess I'll let you take it from there because that's a pretty interesting story. What made you choose that as the album title? That predates even before you moved to Chicago, I think.
Actually, I did play there twice.
Awesome.
But it did predate me. I mean, I think it was around in the 50s. It was around before the checkerboard even. So it's like a hallowed ground. It's holy ground. And yeah, I met Teresa and the whole thing. She was a character. And yeah, so when we were doing the record, you know, Joe kept saying, this is a real Chicago blues record. I love it. I love it. And he's like, it was kind of his brainstorm, his child. He's like, we should name it after one of the really, you know, important blues clubs. And he said, you know, Teresa's, the checkerboard. So I'm sitting on my phone and I looked up Teresa's address. He says, that's it. Let's name it that. Because it's kind of like, you know, open the door, walk in, and that's kind of what the record's about. I mean, it still has a modern sound to it in terms of the engineering's fantastic, I think, and it's got a lot of raw power. But if you're in Chicago, you know that people that play blues in Chicago, it's not polite. You know what I'm saying? It can be delicate, sensitive, and sensual, but it's going to be hitting you right between the eyes most of the time.
And you mentioned Joe Bonamassa, who produced the album. How did you and Joe get connected?
Well, you know, it's funny. I was never a big internet person. That used to scare me. And my kids are like, Mom, put the flip phone down. For God's sake, get an iPhone. I was that bad. And then lo and behold, in like 2014, this video goes viral. And then it sort of starts snowballing. And so one day I had this little video, and I don't usually put my own videos up, but you know, like little promo, like come to the mines, we're playing, bing. And this one video of me playing at the mines kind of goes crazy on Twitter. And like Vernon Reid from Living Colors retweeting it, and Tracy Guns, who was former Guns N' Roses, LA Guns now, and then Joe Bonamassa. So I reach out to everybody, message them, and they're all cool. They're all like, oh, you're great, we love you. And Joe's like, I want to help you. And I was like, bing. So it went there. I mean, he knew about me. And it's funny, I used to play the House of Blues. I mean, till COVID I did, but I had the House of Blues gig at like every Monday for years, even before the Mines this second go around. And the booking agent calls me like the day of the show. Hey, Joanna, just to let you know, if it's okay, there's this guy who's going to open up the show for you, because I played in the restaurant, not the hall. If you don't mind, he's a young up-and-coming guitar player. I'm like, I don't care, sure. And I go, and it's Joe Bonamassa, who I didn't really know. This was like 2002. So I told Joe, and Joe's like, I remember that gig. I was there trying to get Bruce Ziegler from Alligator to sign me, and he turned me down. Oh. Anyway, so yeah.
So what was this recording process like on this album?
It was great. It was, like I said, the one thing Joe said to me, and he did come to the Mines in November of 2019. He was on tour. He's like, I want to stop in and see you. And we have been talking on the phone. He's like, do you trust me? I really have a vision for you and how this album's going to be, but do you trust me? I'm like, yeah, I think you have a good track record there, you know? And where was I going with this? Repeat the question one more time. I'm sorry.
What was the recording process like with the album?
Yeah, so his idea was that we were going to go in, and we were all set up in one room except for him. The instruments were just behind some baffling, the amps, and it was going to be like a live session, like just go in and play. And he said, the first thing he said to all the guys was like, we're not doing this more than 3 times. If this song doesn't, whatever song it is, we're just going to keep going. And I want energy. I want you guys to just go for it. And he was directing, people how to approach different grooves. So the band basically cut the tracks in 2 days. Wow. And I did all the guitar work live there. I didn't overdub anything but my vocals. And then the only thing that came through later was background singer and the horn section, but everything is right there.
That's awesome. I guess we'll take you out with this question. Mm-hmm. For a while, you didn't do a lot of releasing of studio albums. You had other things going on in life. You're raising kids. Life happens. And then last year you released Rise. This year you have an album. Is this going to be the new Joanna Connor, where are you going to start cranking out some studio albums, or are you going to go back? You've always said you're a live musician first, but yeah. Are you going to offer up some of these studio goodies?
Yeah, I'm going to keep going. I mean, Joe said this is not the last record he's going to do with me, which is awesome. So we have some ideas on some things. And yeah, I'd say every year or two, there's going to be new records. And, now I'm an empty nester, so I have a lot more time. And right now there's no gigs, so I have even more time. But hopefully that will change. this summer. We'll see.
Well, Joanna, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Well, it's good to talk to a couple Chicagoans or people that have been there. I've been doing a lot of interviews with a lot of English people, which has been awesome, but good to connect with you guys. I got nothing to say other than I'm proud of the record. I hope everybody buys it. And usually I'm pretty harsh on what I do, but I'm really happy with this one.
All right, well, thank you so much. All right, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Willie Witten and Joanna Connor, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.